Hey there, Purple Marine 81 here. This video is going to be a follow-up video of my last one. Hopefully you watched it on the 35 days I just spent living in the woods. And I know I'm probably going to get some people that are going to be like, oh, bullshit, you didn't do that. No, seriously, I did. And that might seem a little extreme and crazy to some people. But, you know, in hindsight, after I did it, because when I first decided to do it, and probably the first week, I was kind of questioning myself whether or not it was a good decision, whether it was worth, the effort and the frustration basically of doing it, because I didn't stop working or anything. It wasn't like I had a month's vacation to go camping. No, I still showed up to work, did all of that, which kind of posed a little bit more of a challenge sometimes because, you have to keep something like that hidden from everybody because they're just going to look at you like you're some batshit crazy person. If you tell them, oh yeah, by the way, I'm living out in the woods even though I got a house. But I learned so much from doing it. I would repeat it anytime. It was worth its weight in gold in the amount of knowledge that I gained. And as I said in the video that I previously did concerning what I was going to talk about, videos are going to be broken up into key topics. The first of which is water. Water became very apparent to me by day 3 that it was probably one of the most important and irritating things to deal with, because you have to deal with it all the time. You can't take a break from water. It's not something you'd be like, oh, well, within reason, depending on how much water you have at your base camp or on your person, yeah, you can use that for a certain period of time. But it's one of those things that you're constantly having to look for, to transport, that you're using just nonstop. You're nonstop. It's this vicious cycle of which, maybe doesn't dawn on most people until they're in a situation like this, because they're used to just getting out of their tap or taking a shower. It's just there. Not when you're living in the middle of the woods. It's a little bit more difficult to, I guess, utilize. You're always in this revolving state of transporting, finding, using. It's a pain in the ass, really. Primarily because water has a lot of weight to it. If you're transporting like dried goods or something like that, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because of the fact that water is non-compressible, you can't take a gallon of water, put it in a compressor bag, and shrink it down to a quart size. You can't compress water. So whatever vessel you're using, which typically you want it to be larger so you don't have to transport it as often, means more weight and more size. So by virtue of that, it's a royal pain in the ass to deal with. And everything uses it. Everything uses it. Every day, from the time I woke up, first thing you got to do, clean yourself up. Hygiene. That takes an enormous amount of water. Hygiene by far uses the most water than anything, far more than consumption. Even if you try to be conservative with it, on average, it'll use more than what you're using to consume things with. So, body hygiene. And now when I say using it for hygiene, I'm not talking about just like wetting a rag and wiping yourself off. That's sometimes what I did. But I'm talking about actually trying to cleanse yourself, which is what I had to do majority of the time because, like I said, I wasn't taking the time off to work. So I had to go into work and I didn't want to stink. So I had to actually bathe myself. I had a little bottle of shampoo, had to wash my hair. Granted, when I did it, I had more hair than this. But, and then take a bar of soap, wash my body down, rinse myself off. This typically, on average, took me it consumed about a gallon of water, roughly. If I was real conservative, I could get away with about a liter. That was being real conservative, though. A gallon would do it comfortably if I didn't have time to wait around and be careful with the water. I just had to do it. I would say 2 liters easy, and maximum of a gallon to do it. But conservatively, you can do it fairly easily with a liter as long as you're being careful with how much you're pouring over your head, so forth. That's hygiene. Then you got to consider all of your cooking utensils. That gets food and bacteria and stuff all over it. So unless you dig being sick and throwing up all the time, you've got to clean all that stuff out. So what I typically did is I would take one of the pots that was already dirty and put water in that with some soap, antibacterial like dish soap. Heat that water and then use that to wash everything out and then rinse everything off. No, I didn't do it every time, but I just kind of used my best judgment on it to where if it looked like it was getting kind of grody, I didn't want to risk it. Or I ate something that had like meat, like Spam. I ate a lot of Spam. It was something that had like meat and things like that on it that I knew would grow bacteria pretty rapidly. I would wash it because I didn't want to take a chance of getting sick. See, that's cleaning off your dishes, recovered hygiene, general consumption. You're going to go through a lot of that depending on how hot it is. It was pretty warm when I was doing it for the most part. And you also have to consider that moving back and forth with wherever you're going for whatever resources that you're needing to carry, you're going to be carrying a lot more weight with you than just your normal body weight. So almost 90% of the time, you're going to be exerting yourself more than what you normally would just walking down the road or something. And especially with, excuse me 1 minute. Sorry, my throat was getting dry there. With living out in the woods, and you're traversing over, a lot of vegetation and stuff like that. There was a fence that I constantly had to jump over. You're exerting yourself quite a bit more. So that means you're going to be perspiring more. You're going to need more water to compensate for that. And let me tell you, if you don't do that, if you don't compensate for how much fluid you're losing, you will most definitely feel it. Because of the fact that you normally are trying to conserve at least I was, the amount of food that you have. You're not just, gorging yourself there with whatever food, stores you have. I tried to conserve that as much as possible to where I would eat enough to where I was no longer hungry. But that was it. I wouldn't, just eat an entire package or container or something because I could. I tried to be conservative in how much I was eating. Because, even though, yes, like I said in the last video, if I needed food, I would just throw my pack on, hike out of the woods, hike to a grocery store or wherever it was, grab the supplies I needed, and hike back. In that aspect, it's vastly different than, say, hit the fan scenario where you're probably going to have to be foraging for food or, some sort of wildlife or fishing, that kind of thing. But it was the best simulation that I could do given the circumstances because the shit hasn't hit the fan yet. I tried to maintain that whole sense of this simulation throughout the whole time that I needed to try to be conservative in my resources. So that's what I did with the water. So what I would probably recommend, what I did is I basically carried enough water containers on me to hold a gallon of water. I had 2.5 liters. I had two. Let me see. Let me start over here. I had 2 1-liter Nalgene bottles, 1/2 liter Nalgene bottle, and then a 2-liter Camelback. The reason why I kind of started doing it this way, because initially I was like, I'll try to carry as much water as possible, blah, blah. It was just too much. It was too much weight to have to carry around with you all the time because, I never really needed that much water at one given point. And 1 gallon or a little bit over a gallon of water was more than enough to sustain me for a whole day, a full 24 hours. And I knew because of my situation that I could replenish 1 gallon of water every day. So that was all I really needed to try to maintain. And that 1 gallon was easy enough for me to transport wherever I was going. Um, Especially with the Camelback, that made it a little bit easier. I didn't have to get a water bottle out. Water bottles are mainly just for transportation purposes, um, back and forth to base camp and so forth. Let me see. Anything else I can think about? Water. Um, Not a good idea to keep water in one container for an real extended period of time. Because at least in my situation, if you're in a mobile state, if you're a bug-in scenario and you have gear and the necessary tools to maintain the sterilization of a water, yeah, that's cool. But if you're in a mobile state, odds are you're not going to have, iodine tablets or enough of it or some type of product like that to maintain water sterilization. Yeah, I know there's things you can do to do that to re-sterilize, but that's more of a pain in the ass, really. Um, so that's another reason why I didn't think it was necessary or it was optimal for the energy that it cost to carry like 3 gallons of water with me. Um, when there's a chance that it might grow that bacteria and become not non-potable anymore. So 1 gallon daily use was what I kind of felt worked best for me. Maybe it'll work differently for you for whatever type of situation you're in, but I felt that gallon rotation every day, that was optimal for me. That was easily maintained, and I was never dehydrated. But all right, I guess one other little thing I want to touch on too is if you can get like a Hiker Pro or something like that. I know there's all kinds of different products, but little portable backpackers water filtration systems, those are good to have. I would recommend that. But there you have it. There's the first video. There's a lot of knowledge. I'm at 12 minutes on this one. Sorry if I went long on it, but appreciate you guys watching if you did. Next one, I don't really know what the next one is. We'll probably say food. We'll just switch up from water to food. Next one will be food. I'll cover all the stuff on that, things I learned. But again, thanks for watching, guys. Purple Marine 81 out.